everyone's whispering like, oh my God, this could change everything. If he's right, this could do anything.
Yeah.
And maybe it could, but not nearly as dramatically as you're being led to believe. And I keep saying he, but there are a lot of women scammers as well. Maybe I'll do a whole episode on that. Cause like, honey,
I appreciate
the girls are scamming together as a coalition.
Welcome to the Rich and Regular podcast, where we explore life at the intersection of money. I'm Julian.
And I'm Kirsten. And today we are talking about scams. Scams, how to spot them, how to avoid them, and why the same optimism that makes us big dreamers can also make us suckers. But first, I want to shout out to our Spotify fam because they had a lot to say about episode 192, which was the one about how we eat good without going broke.
Okay.
Mr. N1 said that he... Hold on.
N1?
Mr. End1, not M1, End1 said, yeah, I like these episodes because Julian uses his outside voice when he's talking about food.
What is my outside
Any other
voice?
time he's on his Barry White. I rock with y'all though.
I gotta listen to it. I don't know what my outside voice. I don't go outside.
You say it with your chest.
Oh, yeah. I was a little hot. I got a little strong point of view.
But you do be whispering any other time.
That's just how I talk.
Yeah, okay. I know it is how you talk. And then I also want to shout out Britt, who said, I already love y'all, but this is one of my favorite episodes of all. I actually love cooking, but my husband and I are often too quick to DoorDash instead.
Yeah.
You reminded me that every meal can taste good and not take forever. Much love from BP in Houston, Texas. What up, H-Town?
Is that your cousin?
It might be.
That might be your cousin. I know you got a cousin named
Think I got a cousin Brittany, but I think every black girl got a cousin Brittany.
I don't think they're in Houston, though.
No, she's outside of Houston.
Yeah, that might be
Britt can be my cousin.
What's up, Britt?
I got a couple cousins named Brittany, actually.
We didn't earn that. Hey, I feel compelled to give, I guess, two quick announcements. One in line with these comments. And because I know that we had a few people on YouTube who responded and said, shout out to Listen Till the End Gang. You know, did you see those comments?
Yeah,
that was pretty cool. So shout out to the people who still listen to the end, to who get all the jokes and corrected you and said, actually, we do listen. So I appreciate that. But I also
now we got to do an event.
Yeah, right, well, there's that. And, you know, to that, I would also add that I think I do want to help do more lives. I think we talked about that. I haven't quite figured out what a strategy is because, you know, my ambitions be a little bit too big. I wanted to do something like in person. I was like, you know what? The most efficient way to help people cook better is really just to like go live, walk them through it, and like just invite everybody into the kitchen. So hopefully we can get that done. I wouldn't even say hopefully. We will get that done this year, so stay tuned for that. I want to pivot one last time because I do think it's appropriate. You know, we've spent a lot of time in New Orleans. We've spoken and visited New Orleans recently. We got married in New Orleans, and we know that they suffered a recent tragedy right down there in the French Quarter. And so our hearts and thoughts are with everyone who was affected by that. I will skip to the other coast and also say we have a significant amount of followers and listeners and viewers who are based out of the Los Angeles area. And so we know that they are struggling with some wildfires and high winds. And at the time of recording, it does not seem like that's really like veering in the right direction. And so hopefully you all find some peace and some comfort and some safety soon. And, you know, maybe while you're just trying to get back to a little bit of normalcy, you can listen to this episode and just know that your favorite podcasters are thinking of you. And so that's that. I want to go and jump into let's talk about these scammers, man. I've been wanting to talk about this for a while.
You have. It's been you might use your outside voice in this episode.
Listen, let that be a warning.
We're gonna try not to name names, but you know.
I'm gonna go off a couple times.
Well, there's a couple reasons that I wanted to talk about this in addition to your own motivation, which is, you know, always something I like to hop on. When Julian is motivated to talk about a topic, we're going to talk about it. But the other reasons I wanted to talk about this is because we've mentioned this several times. We're about to welcome some new administration into the White House.
Yeah.
And with that comes a new approach to what they call free speech.
Leniency in all things.
Yeah. Less regulations, less controls over content, misinformation, and disinformation.
Yeah.
And most recently this week, at least at the time of the recording, Mark Zuckerberg just announced that Facebook and Instagram are going to stop fact checking. They're going to end the third-party fact check and rely on community notes, which is what X or Twitter uses now, where you basically crowdsource the truth. And if there are enough people who say like, actually, then they'll add a little disclaimer at the bottom.
Yeah.
For people who are willing to scroll. And I now know that listeners like you all are willing to wait to the end. So you might catch it. But we've also talked a lot about creativity and using AI and just like this new era of creation and content. And I truly believe that right now, the most creative people in the world aren't in Silicon Valley. They're not in Hollywood. They're not even in your marketing office at the local agency. They are scammers. Scammers are so creative these days. And I felt like we needed to go back and revisit what a scam looks like, how to spot one, and how to avoid them.
Yeah, they don't have guardrails, right? And so we may be telling ourselves that, all right, there are certain things that you can say, there's certain things that you are allowed to do, and scammers don't have that, right? They don't have those parameters or guardrails. They're like, nope, that's available to say, that's available, like that nerve can be touched. Like they are willing to do just about any and everything to ensure that they get what they want from you. And so, yeah, it kind of makes sense that they do tend to be quite creative. Now, there's also a good deal of very sloppy scammers out there. And so it's a mixed bag, but that's not why I wanted to talk about it. I wanted to talk about it primarily because as I'm getting older and I got invited to a 60th birthday party the other day. And I legitimately was like, dude, why would you invite me to your birthday party? And I realized I knew this dude for like 15 years. And I was like, oh crap, like you about to turn 60. And so it made me think about a lot of these people who I know who are, if we're just being honest, like tech illiterate, right? But it's not just them. I'm being cheeky when it comes to the 60-year-olds that I know, right? Like I will hopefully be 60 someday and hopefully cooler than the 60-year-olds that I know. But I know plenty of people who are in their 30s and 40s and they call themselves tech and, they're not comfortable. That is, in my opinion, just the precursor to illiteracy, right? It starts with discomfort. And then eventually, if you don't correct it, if you don't really focus on it, it eventually becomes illiteracy. And unfortunately, wherever you are on that spectrum, you are making yourself susceptible to scamming. And so there's that. But I will also say, like, one of my other motivations is because we've kind of done the research a little bit. I remember last year when we launched our financial technology toolkit, which is still available. We'll make sure that we mention that and add a link to the podcast and the video. But it is on the rise and we're still waiting. And when I say it, I'm referring to financial fraud. But this is like the golden era of financial fraud. And we spoke about this in the toolkit and some of the emails that we've spent with regards to that tool. But I'm anticipating this to be the fourth record-breaking year for reported financial fraud, right? And to put that in perspective, I think in 2023, 2024, the amount of reported financial fraud to the Financial Trade Commission was around $10 billion. And to put that in perspective, the value of the Dallas Cowboys, which many would argue was the most popular NFL franchise in the NFL, was around $9 billion, right? So like more than like the total value of the most popular football franchise in the world, really, U.S. football, was lost just to financial fraud. And I always add to that. That's just what was reported. Right. Because what we know for sure, and I know this from like research, but also personal conversations with people, if you don't talk about financial fraud, people will not disclose that they've been victims of it. Yeah. And because of that, we don't really get to learn from those mistakes. And so hopefully we can use this platform, everything that we know and have experienced and have heard, but have also researched, and use that to like say, hey, let this be a safe space for us to talk about this so that everybody can learn from it and hopefully not fall into the same trap that you may have fallen into.
Absolutely. Whether you are young or old or in the middle,
listen,
you
we know
are
kids.
vulnerable.
We know kids, 5-6 years old.
Roblox
will
got
scam caught up with some scams.
Absolutely. Yeah. They will get $50 out you clean. Go check your kids' Robux receipts to make sure that they're not sending anything. But you're right. Scams come in all types of forms. They go after all different types of people. But what they share in common is exploitation. They're either exploiting your trust, your urgency, or just your vulnerability. Yeah. And it could be your money, your information, your emotions. Scammers don't care. They're going to find a way to exploit it if you're not paying attention. Yeah. So before we jump in, I do want to clarify who we're talking about. Like, we're not talking about just slick talking, charismatic people who can get you to buy something, but you are consenting and maybe you have regret. That's not a scam. I know the internet uses scam loosely, but if you agree and the person is upfront and you somehow have buyer's regret after the fact, that doesn't inherently make it a scam. Just because the odds are lower for success or satisfaction, it's not inherently a scam.
See, this is the issue.
I know.
This is the issue, right?
That is the issue.
So you can be a legitimate professional and entrepreneur and use scam tactics to get somebody's money. That to me is a scam. Like I think part of the problem is that we do exist and in many cases maintain a culture of allowance. We allow people to go past the edge of legality and just morality sometimes. And granted, that is subjective. So I get that. But there are certain things that we know, and I believe many entrepreneurs, especially today, know that they shouldn't be saying things. And they say it because they know that that's what's going to give them a bit of an advantage or an edge to help push somebody closer to making the sale. But I will also say this, and we don't have to get into great detail because that could be the entire conversation. Corporations do the same thing. And I think a lot of these social media entrepreneurs know that, very similar to what you hear when someone's trying to invite you into a MLM. They start to say, well, what's the difference between that and your organization and blah, blah, blah. It looked like a pyramid scheme to me. That's exactly what a lot of these quote unquote digital entrepreneurs or social media influencers or scammers out there sort of say, because they say, well, how is that any different from what this company done did or what this pharmaceutical company did? And then they came out and said, oh, well, actually this cold medicine never worked, even though we sold billions of dollars over the last 10 years. So I get that. But I think the safer thing to do from a victim's perspective is to just call it all a scam. Like, why are we going to sit here and try to not call it that? Like,
if you paint with that broad stroke of a brush, then you are going to leave yourself out of a lot of investments, a lot of opportunities, which is why I think it's a fine line. You're absolutely right. I think scams thrive between the space of optimism and delusion. Entrepreneurs have to be optimistic. You don't have a bunch of historical data. You have to tell a story that allows people to believe enough to want to give you some money for your product, for your vision, for your dream. And scammers are excellent at telling those types of stories, telling the stories that we want to believe, right? The difference is the intention and whether the thing is actually there. Like, are you actually going to deliver on the promise? I'll give you an example. Elon Musk. There is a lot of conversation about whether he is a scammer or whether he's just an optimistic entrepreneur. And it's interesting because Scott Galloway, who is someone whose opinion I respect, says that Tesla is half car company, half story company. Like, it's built on a promise. But the difference is scams take your money for the promise. Companies will at least good companies will at least try to use your money to deliver the promise. They're at least trying to deliver the promise versus just making promises, taking your money, and then making more promises when they run out of that money.
Yeah, I don't know that I agree with that either, but I'll let you have it because I think that you can fake an attempt all day.
You can
fake an attempt all day, and there are people who've been locked up recently for mastering the art of faking the attempt.
That's true.
Like that's what Elizabeth Holmes did. She faked the attempt.
That
doesn't make her any less of a fraud. Carlos Watson of Aussie Media, I believe, who's probably someone that a lot of people have not even really heard about unless you've been in the media space. But I think he just got sentenced to around 10 years. He was over there.
He's in jail.
Pretending to be an executive at YouTube and basically inflating his numbers and, squeezed millions of dollars out of companies, basically saying that they got way more viewership and all that stuff within the brands and the platforms that he owned when he wasn't really doing those things. But he could say on paper, well, we have staff, we have a building, we have television shows, we have contracts. And so this is part of the reason why it's such a tricky issue. But I understand what you're saying.
Yes, because faking an attempt is not an attempt. Like those are two different things. Like, did you actually put an effort in and attempt something, or was all your effort in the deception, in the faking? That is a scam. It's a fine line. And that's why we're talking about it, because there are signs. It's not like you have to be, what's the word? Blinded. That's not the word. Blindsided. Thank you. It's not like you have to be blindsided in order to understand. Sometimes it does take some experience, people who need to learn from going through it, need to touch the stove to know that it's hot. Sometimes it takes that, but a lot of times it just takes a greater awareness. And that's what we're trying to deliver.
Yeah, I think just generally speaking, right, like where I think we can all agree is that scammers make a deliberate effort to create this mirage or this illusion. Yeah. And they put, I would say, a greater emphasis on maintaining the illusion than they do in making the attempt to actually make it happen. So I think about Bernie Madoff, a lot of work. Like there was an entire hidden department centered around maintaining the illusion of returns for his clients. And while he also had another department of people who are analysts and doing all these things, it was like one for one. I'm just making it up, right? There was just as much of an effort to make sure that the lie was maintained, because I would imagine a lot of the people who were in the actual securities division and selling and brokers and all that stuff actually thought that they were doing something. Actually thought that they were doing good work. What they didn't realize is that, like it all kind of fails and washes out at the end. And we pocket the money. That's what pays for all these parties and all of the buildings and the brand to maintain it. But really, what we tell our clients they're doing is completely made up and is done in the whatever floor that was that nobody can go on.
Yeah.
So it's tricky, man. But the reason why I am more pro drawing a line, because so many people are being scammed. And at some point, I would rather be safe and say, you know what? No, that sounds scammy. It's scam-ish, scam-like, whatever it is. But if it's even remotely near this line that we're talking about, you should just be backing away from it.
Right. Yeah. You mentioned Bernie Madoff's, entire department that was there to preserve the lie. And that doesn't really exist on the internet per se, but what does exist is hype. And I think we really have to talk about hype. There's a guy named Johannes Klingabel who wrote a piece about hype as a scale, which I thought was just really brilliant. And he talked about the hype cycle as a roller coaster for your expectations. It starts with this innovation trigger where there's a shiny new product or person, an idea who is talking about passive income or whatever it is that bursts on the scene. Everyone's whispering like, oh my God, this could change everything. If he's right, this could do anything. Yeah. And maybe it could, but not nearly as dramatically as you're being led to believe. And I keep saying he, but there are a lot of women scammers as well. Maybe I'll do a whole episode on that. Cause like, honey,
I appreciate
the girls are scamming together as a coalition
in Cancun,
as a coalition
in bikinis. In the hot tub.
So after the innovation trigger comes this peak of inflated expectations where the buzz just reaches this fever pitch. And suddenly this thing is being hailed, or this person is being hailed as the cure for all of your problems, your shortcut to success, and maybe even the secret to eternal youth and friendship. Whatever it is that they're promising, these are things like crypto back in 2021 or NFTs that were supposed to turn JPEGs into like yachts or whatever it is that they were promising. But reality always catches up. So then the next phase is this trough of disillusionment, which is where the promises fall flat. Yeah. So the hype crumbles. People start asking like, wait, was this a scam? Like, what is this? And then the legitimate ones that survive that crash start a slow, steady climb up the slope of enlightenment, where they actually prove their worth quietly without all the fireworks. And the lucky few will make it to the plateau of productivity, where they just become boringly reliable and just work. The scammers, though, never make it past the peak. Never make it past the peak of inflated expectations. If there are personalities or people or products that you remember from the 2020s and you're like, dang, what happened to that?
I remember peeping that game really quickly, especially as we were trying to build our Rich and Regular and thinking about what we wanted to stand for. And, I think one of the biggest differentiators for us was that we knew very early on that we were never going to be the biggest. And we were not aspiring to be the best at what we do. And that may sound weird because, like, well, why wouldn't you do that? And it was more so because there were certain values that we just held true, like our marriage, our family, and our legacy. Like, I am very mindful of the fact that at some point my son who is now 7 years old, will be watching and listening what I did. And I wanted to make sure that we could stand by whatever it is that we said, that it was verified, that we could back it up. And I was okay with losing out on riding a certain hype train or wave at the time. And as someone who has been in this space for a number of years now, I mean, I want to say I've seen, man, at least 4 or 5 big waves where it was like, man, you got to be doing this if you're not doing this, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like over and over and over again. So that's hype. Now, not everyone who was a hype beast was or is a scammer.
That's true.
But I do think that the purpose of hype and the way that scammers use it is, going back to what I said, is to create this illusion of certainty in an effort to help you ignore the present risk.
Yeah,
it's
or the
about
details.
Ignore the details. Like, that's fine. Trust me, that will all get washed out if you just do this thing, if you just buy the product, if you just buy the class or the course, or just join the mastermind or whatever it is, right? Like, join this community, spend hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars to do it. It will all wash out. And trust me, you would rather be on the other side, which is what I'm trying to present to you in my marketing and in my hype reel and in these flashy pictures. You would much rather be here doing what we're doing than where you are right now. And that understanding and that willingness for scammers and or / hype beasts to go there and kind of dangle that carrot is at the heart of the problem. And so I like that. I might actually read that book, because I do think that that's a great breakdown. And I do in some ways study scam. I'm fascinated by scamming.
You are.
I do. I find it very interesting, and also think it's a very great way to learn the tricks of the trade so that you know what to fall for. It's like reading a book about magic tricks. It's like, oh, I know how he did it. I'm way more interested in figuring out how they did it and how they're doing it. Not because I want to do it, but because I'm like, man, what else do I want to make sure that I never fall for?
You're right. That's real. And it's not a book, it's an article. So I'll link to it in the show notes in case anyone else is interested. But it is a very telling pattern and cycle that you can apply to almost anything that you've heard about in the last couple years. And it don't even have to be like big financial stuff. It can be stuff as simple as mouth tape or whatever is going around on TikTok.
That's a scam.
I don't know.
I got hit with the mouth tape ad.
I don't know.
The other day.
All I know is people are waking up like peeling their lips apart. It's like, dang, y'all don't kiss at night? Like, why would you cover your... Anyway, I'm sure there's going to be a mouth tape disciple in the comments. Like, it works, I swear. Here go my link, buy some. So I want to talk a little bit about common red flags. I'm going to go traditional scams, and I think you're going to piggyback with more like digital oriented scams. So let's just talk about traditional scams, like people who call you or mail you or text you wanting something.
But you're not talking about types of scams. You're talking about like red
flags that it is a scam.
Yeah. I remember, quick side note. I remember I wanted to do this, but we couldn't quite fill out the list enough to like make it a full podcast or something like that. But it was like dead giveaway.
Dead giveaway. We can call this section that.
We can call it the dead giveaway. When somebody does this or says this, it's a dead giveaway. That this just might be a scam.
Yeah. And it's a might be, right? It should alert your little spidey sense to say, let me ask a few more questions. Yeah. Let me channel the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, why, and then even add the H with the how. So the first one is unsolicited contact. If somebody calls you out the blue about some money, assume it is a scam, right? Legit companies are not cold calling you with limited time opportunities, fake lottery winnings. You don't remember entering a contest, but somehow you won it. Make it make sense. Yeah. Like, legitimate companies aren't trying hard to give you money. Even the ones that owe you money don't try hard to give you money.
I'm going to say this too. I would also say be wary of really, really hard sells, right? So like whether or not we're talking about a company reaching out or somebody offering up a service, like anybody that tries to sell me way too hard without like even trying to warm up to me, huge red flag.
Yes.
Huge red flag.
Urgency and pressure. Absolutely. Scammers love to rush you. So
let's go ahead and get this on the books now, because I really want to help.
The deal is done. Mm-hmm. There's only one spot. If you don't, I got 3 more people today. So if you don't have it, then...
Because you know what it does for me? What it tells me is that you really want me to solve your problem.
Correct.
Right. Your urgency is an indicator that you want me to solve whatever cash flow issue you got going on.
Exactly.
but you haven't even really asked about my issue yet.
Correct.
But you
What's the
quick,
rush?
you want to book it, you want to like get it locked in because now it was like, this sounds like a you problem.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And that's not to say that there aren't times where something is a limited time offer. Like that's real. If there's a good reason for it being a limited time offer, maybe a content creator doesn't want to open their books all year round, or maybe the inventory is only so much, whatever it is, that's not what we're talking about. Yeah. We're talking about pressure, like urgency, pressure. If you don't do it now, then it's gone. Your response should always be like, great, let it go. And if it returns, then it was meant to be.
Yeah.
Like that's what the Psalms say, or the Proverbs, one of them books. Another red flag is that it is too good to be true. And this is a hard one because, the beauty of expertise is that it makes it so that you can see what's possible, but you can also see what's impossible or even improbable.
Yeah.
So when in doubt, ask an expert, and preferably an expert that doesn't have this big charismatic personality, an expert who can ask you the questions that you can go back and ask the person who's trying to sell you. But there are just things that are too good to be true. Like if it were true, why isn't everybody doing it? Like that should be your first question. And they all have answers for this. They do. But it is.
It's tough. So two things. One, I hear you in terms of being wary of like the big personality. Like to me, like the big personality is a dead giveaway.
How like, big is
to
big?
Me, Flash, I should say.
Maybe it's not so much
of the Flash to me is like a red flag.
Yeah.
Right. Like many times you really want the product, the service, or whatever it is to speak at least a little bit for itself. When you overpower that with your own flash and pizzazz, to me, that's a red flag. But to your point around like too good to be true is tough because it's like, you talk about historical stock market returns, right? Like it is safe to say, it is proven that, you can expect an average of 10%, or not even so much you can expect, but that the historical average stock market return is 10%. And so that is likely baked into many people's calculations. Some people may say, well, are we talking about before or after inflation, blah, blah, blah. Now, that does not mean, right? And financial companies say that, like that if you put in this amount of money, which is why we always tend to use the language like you can expect, or you might see, blah, 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 or this is based on historical stock market returns, etc. It's a fine line there. This is where the SEC and all these other companies come in and say, you can say these things, you cannot say these things without putting yourself into legal
they
problems.
Used to. We don't know that they're going to say that in this next 4 years stint. We don't know what kind of regulations companies are going to be able to use, or individual coin creators are going to be able to use to market their products. And so the true is the part that you have to pay attention to. If it's too good to be true, the 10% benchmark is a truth. Yeah. It has been recorded. It has been fact checked, double checked, honored by regulations. Like you can see that is true. Too good to be true might be 10,000%, because that ain't never happened before.
Well, even,
unless you're a
Bernie
founder.
Madoff wasn't making those kinds of promises. He was making promises around 20 and 30%, And
which back then was too good to be true. Yeah. Consistently, like.
Yeah, he did it. On paper.
On paper.
On paper.
But he didn't do it the way he said he was doing it. That's what made it a scam.
Yeah.
So just keep in mind that whatever promise that they are offering to you should be anchored in a truth somewhere. And it's your job as the person who's buying to find that truth. This is why we
verifiable truth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We teach you in Making Money Grow, our investment class, to ask, what's the time period? Like over what time period? Don't just tell me about returns. Don't just tell me that you made $2 million. Tell me like when. Because if you made it all in 2020 when things were going crazy and you ain't made $1 since 2025, that's a very different story. Yeah. You have a very different type of expertise. The other two red flags I would say for traditional scams are weird payment requests. So anyone who's asking for gift cards, wire transfers, crypto, if they want payment in something that you can't easily track or that isn't like FDIC insured, it's a dead giveaway that you might want to like
something that requires you to hand over your phone.
Yeah.
Right. Or anything that requires you to, completely sacrifice your privacy in other areas. Right. Like that is a huge red flag. Like, to your point, there's a standard way of conducting transactions. Anybody that is veering outside of that is doing it for a reason. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's a scam, but you are putting yourself at risk, and that is unnecessary. So, yeah.
And then bad grammar and spelling. Like this is my pet peeve. And I'm not saying I don't ever make a spelling mistake, but if it's a a proper transaction, I'm going to need you to run that grammar and spelling check to make sure that my name is spelled correctly. Just basic words. Payable should be spelled correctly.
That's a soft one. And
it's a yellow flag.
That's an orange flag. The reason why I say that is because, and this has been true, at least from my standpoint, for the last 10 years. And for the record, like, I'm sure there are typos all over, our website or something like that. I'm sure of it. I'm just saying that because I'm confident that there may be, but
of course,
we make an effort to ensure that those things are not there, because we know that we have a pretty good eye, or at least we say that, we have a pretty good eye, and we know that it represents a level of sloppiness and a lack of attention to detail.
And we're humans.
Yeah.
The key word here is bad.
But the reason...
Bad grammar.
That's fair.
Bad spelling.
That's fair. But the reason why I was offering a little bit of a backstep is because, like, in recent years, I've seen highest levels of media have typos on their website.
Oh, yeah, me too.
The highest levels of, and you go back and think, like, surely somebody saw that, and like it just gets moved on because the emphasis is on creating more and pushing more things out there, and they just leave it. And so, in many ways, it feels like it's a bit of a old school red flag, and something that more recently has just been allowed and more commonplace.
Yeah.
Okay, my turn. And this is me pointing directly at social media, and it's because, like, it's been a really, really tough thing. And I'll tell a really brief story, because I know we had a plan for a while. We were so frustrated with so many of the scams that we saw, specifically as it relates to financial courses, that we decided that we were going to create and build what we were anticipating would be the TripAdvisor for financial courses for a while. Mm-hmm. And we built out the website. We had business partners. We spent a bunch of money, not enough time building it out. There was just so much going on at the time, and we ultimately did not deliver on that. But the idea was to allow the cream to rise to the top, so that people could make a more informed decision, as opposed to solely relying on the marketing copy and the claims, the huge claims that we were seeing popping up over the last couple of years around where people wanted to learn about money and investing. I still believe in that idea. I don't have the money to build it out, nor do I have the time. And I think the interest is pretty much gone now. But all of that to say, there's a lot to be wary of on social media. And I'm saying that as someone whose business is rooted in that space. And so, I feel fine talking about it, because I don't believe we do any of these things. Yeah. And it kind of works. I don't see necessarily to our benefit, but it's just to help do our part, to be good citizens and to be a good representation of the space. And by that, I mean both social media and personal finance. And so when it comes to online marketing, things like digital products, I think one of the biggest red flags, I would say, is people who promote the brand or the broader company more so than the actual results from whatever it is that they're selling. Yes. Right. And so when you hear things like, we are the best, or we're the number one, or it's like, according to who? Right? There is no list. We're the number one, blah, blah, blah. Like,
or we've sold 2 million of these. Yeah. Or I've made $10 million in the last 3 years, but not just as vocal about the results. Correct. I've created 10,000 new millionaires.
Correct. And here's who they are.
Exactly.
You can ask them yourself, right? Yes. Like, that to me is, again, not necessarily a scam, but it is certainly a tactic that people use to help people overlook a price tag or whatever it is. Typically it's the price, or just making the transaction. It's little things like that that I think are red flags and something that people should be mindful of. I would say, in addition to that, just unrealistic promises or guarantees around success, right? So, like, yes, it's perfectly fine to say these are examples of people who have been a member of this community or taken this class or this course, and this is who they are. This is the results that they've seen. But when you start to, like, get really, really close to that line and you start saying things like, this could be you, or, little things like that, where you are kind of guaranteeing that this is you and it's on you, or you'll get that money right back, in the first sale. It's like that, that I don't know that that's necessarily true, but it's certainly someone saying they want to do and they're willing to say whatever it is to get you to make that purchase.
Yes. For me, it's not acknowledging that results are going to vary based on individual effort or external factors. And there's a way to do this that still flows with marketing copy.
Right.
There's a lot of people who will say, like, you get out what you put in, or the people who work on this, the people who see the most success spend 3 hours a week on it, or they live in these areas, or they have an existing base of 100 people that they can call. But that just the lack of honesty around what factors will influence someone's success is just like, I need more questions.
Yeah. I want to go back to the first one that I said really quickly, just because I want to give two examples that actually have nothing to do with social media, but I think help prove the point. One was, because I have no problem throwing shade, as a former employer of ours who for a while would talk about being the biggest in the business. Right. They had more, it was a hotel company, and they bragged about having the most rooms in the world. And I remember thinking, that's such an odd flex.
Well, they never said that. They just said the biggest. And it was like, by what? Because it wasn't properties. And it was like, oh, room count.
Right. It wasn't, oh, we have more hotels in the world than anyone else. It was like, well, our hotels have more rooms. And I was like, what? That's such an odd flex. But again, this is what marketers do, to cherry pick something that they believe that they can stand on and to use that as a bit of a distraction. Like, I would never send my son to a school because it was like the biggest school. Nah, this school is way more classrooms than, like, that doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? That's not something you brag about. Now you might say, like, even top selling, but top selling doesn't necessarily mean best. No. You know what I mean? Like, there are plenty of foods that are top selling that are absolutely gross and bad for you. Doesn't mean you should be buying them or eating them. You know what I mean? And so all of those things, I think, tend to be a bit of a distraction. And I had another example. Oh, it was a team that I used to work on. And it was like a call center environment for a while. And one of the key metrics were the number of calls that we took, right? Like the number of problems that we solved. It was like, wow, we got, I'm just making it up, 500 calls today. Like, we worked really, really hard. And I was like, well, shouldn't the goal be to have like a low number, right? Like, we should be trying to, that means you got a lot of problems. You know what I mean? Like, we should be doing everything that we can to solve some of these problems, to minimize calls coming in or make the solutions to these problems easy for people to find. And so it was little things. I was like, you got to really look at the things that people say that they are proud of, that they're touting, and then ask yourself a couple of qualifying questions around that thing and say, well, why would they choose to brag about that? Okay. So my next red flag, I would say, is like, and this feels odd even saying this, but like, it is a thing, anonymous instructors. This is specific to classes. And so, like, when you don't know who the instructor is or who the instructors are, if a class does not provide like verifiable information about the instructor's qualifications, you can't find anything about them, then you should be hesitant to sign up for that class.
And this is a huge, huge thing, especially in group cohort-based learning environments or products. There will be a face that sells you the product, but once you get in and you're working with the cohort, there are these coaches or members of the team that lead you through the curriculum. And maybe occasionally you get the person who you bought from as for office hours or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's not to say that that format is not right? You can still learn a lot from members of a team or just being in community with other people while you're learning, but you should be able to learn who they are before you buy. Yeah. You should be able to see like the coaching staff or team. And if it changes while the program is live, that's another thing. That's just a communication. But the fact that you can't, and you might assume that you're going to be learning from Guru ABC, red flag to me.
Yeah, for sure. Another red flag is unverified testimonials or like over the top reviews. This one, I'll just tell you a quick way to kind of solve it is to do like a reverse image search. Right. And so like, who is this person? If there's an image selected or tied to a particular review and like this high rating, like just search for the person. You should be able to find them. And you might find that that person is like not real, especially today. You know, and, we've seen a lot with like these AI accounts, which I believe actually Meta have walked back on. But like, this is the world that we live in. And so you can't just say, wow, look at all these people. Those people may not actually be real people, or that may be stock photography. You know, we know someone who, and I laugh every time I see her. And it's like, man, look, I don't know how much she's getting paid, but she's over here selling like, erectile dysfunction pills. And then she's over here. Like, people will have no idea. Like, she sold her image, that photo, to go onto a website, and now people can use it. And, she's all over the place, but she ain't got nothing to do with none of these products.
Yeah.
But this is the reality of the world that we live in. Another big one, and this one, in the last couple of years, the emphasis or the overemphasis on affiliate marketing, or like the focus on your ability as a customer to recruit and earn money off your purchase is a huge red flag to me, right? And this was like one of my core, probably have like 3 big red flags just with respect to MLMs. But I remember going to one with my mom years ago, and I was like, just sitting there and listening and learning. Because again, I'm like super intrigued by these things. I'm like, wow, we're here for this service. And they're not actually talking about what the service does or the problems that it solves. They're talking about how each of you as prospective customers can earn money off of this service. And I was like, well, this is such a huge red flag, but it didn't seem like anybody cared about that.
Oh, no.
They didn't care about that at all. And I was like, wait a second. If you're telling me this juice does all these amazing things, then talk to me about the amazing things that it does. Don't talk to me about how
I sell 3 juices, I can pay my rent this month.
Yeah. Where's the research? Where is like the verifiable, data to back up these claims, so that even if I were interested in buying and intrigued by the opportunity that I could earn some money, give me the ammunition that I need. But like, that wasn't there. It was more so, and here's how you can find more people to fall for the same scam that you've fallen for. And I was like, well, that's a huge red flag.
Correct. And traditional affiliate marketing works differently. This is not against affiliate marketers who receive a commission for promoting a product. In this world, you're buying a product to learn something, but then you get into it and you realize that like you actually could make more money if you just told other people to buy the same product that you did. And that's the difference. If they're just trying to recruit you, which is the majority of IG scams that I see on the timeline these days, where someone's buying a $297 product, the product only has about $40 of information in it, but it costs $297 because whoever got you to buy it earned $150 off of your purchase.
That's right.
And that is the scheme. So they continue to talk about it. They continue to promote it. Maybe they even white label it and come up with their own version of it, but it's a recruiting tactic. It's an affiliate tactic where you're not actually learning the digital marketing that you signed up for. You're selling a digital marketing product in order to make money.
Yeah.
And it's not a scam per se.
Scamish.
But it is scam adjacent because you're not, I don't know.
I thought you were going to say scamma-jamma.
Scam.
I didn't know where you was going with that. But no, it is too close for comfort.
It's too close for
it's one of the things that I think people should just label it as a red flag and walk away. Orange flag too. Fine. Whatever it is.
Whatever.
But walk away. Last 2 I would say is just vague content. And this could be for courses, products, services, doesn't matter, but like vague information, like not enough detailed information. Like, you should be able to find everything a reasonable person would want to know about whatever it is that someone is asking you to buy on the website or in the pamphlet. If that information is not in there, it's not there for a reason. They either don't know or they are far more interested with you paying attention to something else other than the actual promise of whatever it is that you're buying. The last thing I would say, and this brings me back to my very first day of graduate school, my accounting professor, who unfortunately I don't remember his name, but if I saw him tomorrow, I would be like, hey, what's up, Mr. You? He basically called getting an MBA a bullshit detector. And I loved it. And I was like, yeah. So he basically was teaching us all of the different ways that companies have used some funky, accounting to make the company look way more successful and way more profitable than it is. And I think the same is true with sales tactics. You start to see it in marketing tactics, data manipulation or deliberate leaving out of critical information.
Incomplete.
So you mentioned like over what time frame, right? Specifically when it comes to stock and market returns. Like, it's great that you just did this one trade and you got a great return, presumably. But what about the negative trades that you made, right? Like, let's look at what you earned from trading as a whole over a certain period of time. If that number is not greater than what I might anticipate from making a more passive, simple, and affordable and far more predictable, less risky investment, then we don't really have much to brag about. Now, when you can tell me that you've done that over a number of years, that to me is something that is a much greater sign of credibility and success. And I would say then you have the right to charge whatever it is that you're charging for your products or your services.
Yeah.
But what you find a lot of times with these products is that they leave out critical information like time frame or cumulative returns or whatever it is, like all these little
starting
things.
balance.
And a starting balance,
like
right?
If you put 2 million in and then you screenshot your balance of 2.1 million, it's like, that's not, if you didn't have 2 million to begin with, like you're not going to get the same result as this person who is giving you a very vague, likely photoshoppable screenshot.
Correct. So yeah, it's a lot. And the last one's the tough one because it can be conveyed in so many different ways and can be so slick. You see it on commercials all the time. I always think about these hair commercials where they basically tell you that this new version of this shampoo is going to add moisturization and hydration. And like no one thinks of that as a scam. Yeah. Even though it was like last year, y'all said the same thing about the other product. And the year before that, you said the same thing with toothpaste. It's like, well, I thought the last thing was supposed to eliminate that. And now I need the Colgate Total Plus
to get you whiter than white.
Supreme Premium to get what?
That one didn't have charcoal in it.
That one didn't have this. And now it's like a constant thing that they do to get you to spend more and more of your money. They do it in little ways and they do it in big ways. Entrepreneurs do it, or scammers do it, I should say. And so, it's tough. But like data manipulation, showing like one thing compared to the other, it'd be like a 2% difference between A and B, but the visual will make it look like it's a 20% difference between A and B. And it's like, well, that's not what did the prior year look like? Like, what are you gonna make that one look like? A tiny dot? Like, wow, So it's all those little things that you learn over time. You can learn if you take advanced level training, like I did when I was earning my MBA. But even that stuff becomes outdated very quickly, and so you do have to kind of build your own personal curriculum of keeping up with this stuff just to make sure that you don't fall victim to whatever the new scam is.
Yes. Yeah. You really got to attune your senses to look for incomplete information. I don't care if it's someone eating an entire pizza or surrounded by packages. If you don't see them actually like swallow, digest the entire pizza, if it's just cut after cut after cut in the video, there's no proof that they actually ate that pizza. Right? There's no proof that they actually swallowed whatever it is that they are telling you that is so delicious and you have to go buy and here's my link. There's no proof that those orders actually happened and got mailed out just because someone shows you a printer printing a bunch of UPS labels or their house surrounded by a bunch of packages. Like if you don't see them pull up at the post office and put them in the truck, in the box.
I've seen that too. I've seen that scam. Pulled up with the box.
Yeah, but I didn't see it go in the box. I didn't see the transaction of it being handed to the postal worker, because that's truth, right? Everything else is just like seen.
But even that, if you got to do all of that, that's a red flag.
If you got to do all that to sell a product,
if you that's a red flag to me. That's a red flag.
And if you need all of that to buy the product, it should be a red flag to you. Like, maybe I don't need all this because I'm telling you, these companies that you buy from on a regular basis are doing far less. Like Walmart ain't doing all that for you. They barely put the stuff on the shelf and you still buy that. Right. So if it requires your brain to get that amped up in order to make the purchase, that's a sign that you probably don't need this. And this is impulsive and it's chemically driven as opposed to intentional and you actually need it.
Yeah.
So the last thing we'll talk about, because we've been spending a little bit of time on things that are designed to take your money, there are also scams that are designed to take your information. And we're not going to spend a bunch of time on it, but it's important to know that these don't ask for money up front. They're smarter, a little more sinister. Instead, they're baiting you with something enticing. It could be a fake job offer. I know people who have gotten into conversations with recruiters and, logged in, did a video call, they're screen sharing, all this stuff. Don't do that unless you really understand that this is a legitimate thing.
Yeah.
Same with bonus giveaways or even a request that seems legit from your bank. The goal of any of those things is to get you to hand over your social security number, your password, your credit card details without even realizing that you've done it. They just kind of capture it and then they ghost you and you don't hear anything about it. So make sure that you are aware of like phishing scams. Again, and in my own personal case, they come in as like, this invoice needs to be paid, or you still owe us money. And it's a company that I've done business with in the past, whether it's like Norton Antivirus or some tire shop, PayPal, whatever, but it's not a real invoice. Like I know for a fact that I did not charge $400.
And to be clear, it's not from Norton. Right?
And it's not from, that's that part. It's not from Norton.
Yeah.
So make sure that, again, in this world where things are far less regulated, people have far more access to your information, even fun stuff like personality quizzes on social media or, you know, those AI apps or whatever. They're designed to harvest your personal details.
You think all the little you answer these. Now you're trying to answer these 20 questions. It's like, no.
You think you answering innocent questions about your pet, but what they're really trying to figure out is like, what's are the options for password?
Yes.
What are the options for overcoming your secret questions?
Yes.
And the worst part is that once they have your information, you're not just a victim of one scam. You become a target for so many more. Like once it goes on the dark web, anybody can buy it. And
I look at people on social media sometimes who just regularly give away their information the same way I would look at like a newborn baby walking across the street. Like, you know, I've seen a couple crazy videos online of a baby just, you know, have you ever seen that video? Like a random video of like a baby that I think came out the nursery or something like that. Somehow got outside and was like walking on the street.
See, now
it showed up in somebody's Nest camera and they were like, look at this baby. That's how I feel about people online sharing all this information about themselves. Like, y'all look crazy.
You making me think of Carly. Remember Carly Russell, who scammed?
Yes.
Talking about she saw a toddler.
Yes.
In the middle of the street with a diaper on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And it is just that serious. But like people answering these questions, to your point, like clicking on anything just for like shits and giggles. It's like, chill out. Stop giving your information. Stop making it so easy.
Go
for
touch
people
some grass.
to scam you. Go outside.
Listen, go
put
touch
your phone
some grass
down.
Because if that is the level of entertainment that you're seeking right now, then you need, put the phone down. Put the phone down because that's not entertaining. There's nothing entertaining about giving your personal information to a screen where you don't know where it's going. And so if you're at the point where you think that is, it's your sign to go touch some grass.
I will give one final recommendation, and that is to listen to Apple when they tell you to change your password. You can go into your Apple general settings right now, and it'll tell you however many of your passwords have been compromised or ended up on a list somewhere. Like, listen to them, people. Change your password. And I get it. You only like the one that you had because it's so convenient. But, you know, if you used it 20 times, you've really just given the keys away to whoever it is ultimately decides to act on it. And so I don't think we're not in an era of if anymore. It's really just a matter of when. Your job is to not be easy pickings, right? Like if there's money laying on the ground and then there's money that's like, you know, in a little safe and you can crack the safe, you're more prone to just pick up the money that's on the ground. And that is your job, to like help distract or, you know, keep scammers away. Like, don't be the money laying on the ground. Don't make it so easy for people to just pick it up and take your coins. You know what I mean? Like, make it challenging because they don't want to challenge, because they don't have to. It's so easy to just get people's money these days. And so be the person that's at least protected, that's in a safe, that's updated. Change your passwords. I want to say the magical number was like 10 in terms of characters. There's like a significantly lower probability that your password can be cracked, I believe, after like 9 characters than like 8. It's like crazy. It's not like 1 for 1. It's like almost like it'll take you like 3 years to crack it if you have 10 and maybe like 11, but it's something like that. It's in our financial technology toolkit. So the answer to that question, if you're interested, if you don't have it, like I said, the link will be in our podcast notes or in the description of the YouTube video, but spend half a day, do that, get it over with.
That feels like a personal attack because I do ignore it. And I have all the things. I have the password manager, so I could change it. I have two-factor I can never say this word. Two-factor authentication. Authentication. It's a lot.
Pretty sure it's authentication.
Oh, dang. It is.
But you might have also been thinking of authorization.
I don't know. But I got it. And I still don't like changing my password.
Okay.
But I should stop doing that. Stop ignoring the message.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, whatever. All right, y'all. Well, thank you for listening to another episode of the Rich and Regular podcast. Speaking of no longer ignoring messages, if you like what you heard, let us know by leaving a verifiable 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform, or a comment below to keep the conversation, just so people know that y'all are real out there and we're not out here talking to a bunch of bots. We will see y'all next week.
I love that you just told thousands of people that you were vulnerable and they should hack you.
It's not what I said. If you like videos like this and want to see more, make sure you click subscribe and turn on notifications.